Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Nate. I also go by Hockey Boy Nate, and today we are going to be discussing the fact that there could potentially be more severe weather on the way. But before we get started, I'd like to ask you guys to do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, turn on notifications so that you can be up to date with all that I do, which includes severe weather videos or just videos in general, and live streams to where we break down these events. But let's just go ahead and get into today's video. The Convective Outlook for today actually is a marginal risk. So it was slight risk. It had like a 5% chance for tornadoes. Now it has been officially downgraded to a marginal. So that would include a 5% chance for hail, a 5% chance for wind, and 2% chance for tornadoes. But it doesn't look like it was going to be as strong as it once was according to the models. So today's risk isn't really all too strong. However, if we start to look ahead at the next system that comes in, the Storm Prediction Center has now got its eyes on this new low pressure system that'll move on through. And so by Tuesday, they have issued a new slight risk for parts of Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, and northern parts of Texas, as well as a larger marginal risk, which includes much of Missouri, much of Arkansas, into Shreveport, all the way down into the Dallas areas, all the way over into far western parts of Oklahoma, not into the western panhandle, and a bit further into Kansas. So this looks like, according to the Storm Prediction Center, to be a bit of a widespread event. And it looks like that it could include very large hail, with some damaging wind gusts and a tornado possible. They're acknowledging the fact that there very well could be a tornado on this day. So that's something to keep in mind with that the Storm Prediction Center is open to the fact that there could very well be those conditions. But it's not just Tuesday either. Let's take a look and look at this. Day 4 Outlook has been issued, and it is a 30% chance of severe weather. Now, if you guys are new and don't really see 30% chance that often for the day 1 through 3 Outlook, a 30% chance is an equivalent to an enhanced risk. And this right here is for much of Mississippi. You can see actually all of Mississippi is practically in it. And then you have parts of Alabama as well as Arkansas and Louisiana that's actually in this event. So, that's the stretch of the 30%, but the 15% also extends into places like southern Illinois, into southwestern parts of Kentucky, and from central to western parts of Tennessee. Actually, Memphis is in the 30%. That's something to keep in mind too. Extends all the way into western Georgia, all the way to the western panhandle of Florida, like the Pensacola areas, and maybe even into the Tallahassee areas. And then it extends all the way down into southern Louisiana and even southwestern Louisiana, like the Lake Charles vicinity, as well as into little parts of Texas. So this is a larger event, and something for us to keep in mind, especially since we're starting to see a bit of the short range models come in. We already have the NAM up, and even though it goes out only to 18Z, the conditions look extremely favorable for severe weather in this general vicinity. So our next severe weather outbreak, potential severe weather outbreak, I should say, because it's a bit early to say anything for sure, could be on Wednesday in Dixie Alley. So we are having a strong start to severe weather season. It was very slow in the beginning, but now we are having multiple rounds of severe thunderstorms that could potentially produce tornadoes. And then day 5 is actually just this elongated slight risk, this 15% risk that extends from Norfolk, Virginia, not exactly Richmond, but all the way down into Tallahassee and Florida near Jacksonville. And it just takes up basically the coastal Carolinas all the way over into the coastal Georgia areas. So it'll be an elongated low pressure system with a cold front that'll just surge on through, and I'm assuming that's just going to provide some gusty winds just by looking at the outlook. But let's see what they actually have said about this event. So medium range models have come into somewhat better agreement with respect to synoptic features through the early half of the period. Though smaller scale differences persist, still confidence is increased that a fairly widespread severe weather event will occur on day 4, Wednesday, across lower Mississippi Valley and central Gulf Coast region. And northward into the least parts of Tennessee Valley, and then continuing onto day 5. Let's see. I'm going to try and see what they think will happen. So, likelihood for widespread severe weather that warrants greater probability at this time. Yeah, so basically what they're saying is all these models are saying that there is a very much so, all these models are very much so in agreement. So, like, the Euros saying that it's still there. It's a bit further to the south. The GFS is saying it's there. The NAM is saying that it's there. You have all these models that are agreeing that you have a potential severe weather event on Wednesday. So that's really something to keep in mind as it continues to move on through, and that we need to be very mindful, especially since I know we have some viewers who live in the deep south. Just a warning for you all that you guys may start to get some real severe weather relatively soon. Let's take a look at the models real quickly. We're going to take a look at the at today first off, and show you all what exactly people could be seeing. So we'll take a look at the HRRR model and be able to determine that way. So you can see here's our low pressure system that caused our tornado outbreak that we had in the northern panhandle yesterday. It'll push on through, and you can see that the cold front actually gets dragged up completely. You have your warm front. So your warm front is right about here. Your cold front's right about here. And because the storms are kind of moving off to the north and east, they're kind of sucking that last available parts of energy that the warm front advected. So in and around Kansas, you're going to for sure see a tornado event, a smaller one, a very small one actually, mainly because it's in this triple point that is really close to the low pressure system. So the helicity or the vorticity in and around those storms could be stronger. So a smaller tornado event is likely in Kansas, but it's very small, very small. And then later on today, you can see the low pressure system just continue to swirl and churn, and here's your cold front again. Your cold front starting to march on through into places like Arkansas, into Louisiana and Missouri, and these areas can see some gusty winds, maybe even a tornado, but it's not really all too likely. There's not really a lot of moisture in and around these areas, so that's something to keep in mind too, that you do have the threat for severe weather later on tonight if you live in these areas, but it's not all too likely, in my honest opinion. Let's take a look at the NAM. The NAM will be able to tell us what all is happening later on. We're going to be looking at the Tuesday event real quickly. So Tuesday, here is a, I believe this is a new low pressure system. Yep, 100% is a new low pressure system. So right here is the dip in the jet stream. There is the low pressure system that'll move on through into the Central Plains. So if we continue to move on, you'll be able to see that the NAM actually picks up that low pressure system, and you can see this actually start to churn about around Tuesday. But the thing of it is the NAM actually says that there isn't any severe weather on Tuesday, so we might want to use the GFS. So here's Tuesday, early into the afternoon of Tuesday, and you can see, yep, there's the storms that fire off according to the GFS. So you have your warm front that rides here. You have your cold front with scattered storms in Oklahoma and into parts of Texas, like near San Angelo. So you could very well see a nice little severe weather day. Most likely some gusty winds and some large hail, maybe even a tornado with this. I do want to take a sounding real quickly. Supercell Composite, just to pull this up. Tuesday. And let us see. The GFS says that there is some curling characteristics in the hodograph. The hodograph is basically if you were to look from a satellite, like look at a satellite looking to the ground, that picture that the satellite's looking to the ground, and you see a dude launch a weather balloon. The satellite is tracking that weather balloon as it moves up into the atmosphere. So it moves up, down, around, and all sorts of things. So what that does is that gets put here on a hodograph. And when you see it generally curl off to the right, that is indicative that there is a bit of spin in the atmosphere, which can produce tornadoes. Not always, but can. So that's something to keep in mind too, that there is a general spin here. The 1 to 2 kilometers here, I will note, is a bit linear. So that is something to keep in mind too. But regardless, it still has some spin in the atmosphere. So there is a little bit of tornadic probability here. Cape isn't really too strong, but it's forecasted to be above 2,000. So that is something to keep in mind as well. Capping inversion, which is a limiting factor. It's questionable. It very well could limit this event. It is right around that threshold to where it could. By the way, CAPE stands for Convective Available Potential Energy. It's the amount of buoyant force measured between warm air rising, or so warm moist air rising, and very cold air sinking. So the measure of that buoyant force is put into CAPE. So the higher the amount of CAPE, the higher amount of instability you have. And that typically is favorable for thunderstorms to develop and sustain them. Lapse rates are all right. This is more or less for a hail thing, so it's looking okay per se, but you know, it's not exactly the best in the world. So there is a smaller event, maybe a gusty wind and hail threat, but it doesn't seem to be likely that it'll be a very large tornado threat for Tuesday. On Wednesday, however, let's go back over to the NAM. And the NAM actually said something about this event in regards to the conditions. And this actually kind of piqued my interest really, like, 100%. So if you take a look at how the low pressure comes in, it still marches on through. You can see the cold front carries on. And look at that. You have your warm front right here. Your cold front right here. The warm front advects warm air from the Gulf. This is what makes Dixie Alley so dangerous, is because you're really like right next to the Gulf, so it's constant amounts of energy that is coming from the open body of water. And because water is relatively warm and moist, you do not want the fact that warm, moist air is moving over places like this, especially if you have a low pressure system just like it. So that's something to keep in mind too, that as that continues to move on through, there is the chance for some severe storms. And I do want to move over to the Supercell Composite real quickly, and you can actually see that it looks like a widespread event. There's actually some Supercell Composites, which the Supercell Composite is just basically takes into account all the factors within a sounding. So if we take a sounding right here, you can see that, you know, CAPE is very strong. According to the NAM, you're supposed to get 2,800 joules per kilogram to even 3,000. The lapse rates aren't super strong, I will say that much, but you don't really need them to be too strong in Dixie. And then the hodograph, it does veer off, but it doesn't seem to be too strong, so that's something to keep in mind too, that the wind profile is not as nice as we had yesterday. Although I will say, as you go a bit further north, with that typically is what happens. The wind profiles is a bit better, and Cape is still the same. It's around 3,000 joules per kilogram, so that's something to keep in mind with that as well. Now let's go back to the GFS and let's look at the event here a little bit closer on Wednesday. So Wednesday, as it pushes on through, it'll be reaching the Dixie Alley areas with more of a gusty wind and a tornado threat. Maybe not so much hail because those lapse rates are kind of lacking, but let's see. Yep, so here's the low pressure system that pushes on through, and you can clearly see the amount of convection here that bursts from the low pressure system. So right in that risk that the Storm Prediction Center mentioned is 100% spot on according to the GFS here. So that's something to keep in mind too, that you could have some supercells develop in these areas. And then on Thursday, as the event unfolds from Wednesday, it'll continue to push on through and go into Thursday, and it'll be a bit more of a gusty wind threat, in my honest opinion. It'll be more of an overnight gusty wind threat. So areas along the coastal Carolinas need to kind of monitor this. Have like a weather radio while you're asleep. That way you can be notified for anything that could be potentially dangerous by the National Weather Service. All right, temperatures. For much of the U.S., it's actually quite cool right now, but then again, it is in the middle of the morning, so. But you take a look at the Ohio River Valley, it's like 50s. The Northeast is still below freezing point. You can see some in the Northeast is still at around 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Heck, some of the areas in Montana are warmer than some of the areas in the Northeast right now. So that's kind of funny. But then again, the people up in the Northeast may not find that funny. So I'm sorry. But you can see your cold front is passing on through, and it's creating a bunch of severe weather that will most likely generate gusty winds, as we mentioned before. But the temperatures in the southeast is screaming. Take a look at this. 70s, 80s in Florida. You guys are reverting back into spring form. Before too long, you guys might even be in summer. So definitely some warm temperatures that are returning to the deep south here as we continue to move on through. You can see on Monday, the temperatures start to kind of rise a bit more into the Texas, Oklahoma areas, as well as the deep south. It's still relatively cool for the most part in the northern half of the United States. Notice how I said the northern half, because the northern half is about the same temperature. I mean, look at this. 40s, 30s, more 40s, more 30s. You know, all these light yellows and these kind of darker greens and even blues. All of that is like up like mid 40s to upper 30s. So much of the U.S. is in a little bit of a cool down, but that's anticipated for this time of year. But what isn't anticipated is the potential for severe weather that still looms large in the middle part of March, especially after what we had yesterday. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And then from Wednesday, temperatures continue to scream, and they are still relatively warm and moist in Dixie Alley. So that aspect is all right. Dew point, I want to take a look and see what the GFS says. That way I can determine as to what we're dealing with officially. Oh yeah, we have dew points in the 60s, mid to upper 60s, which is actually really kind of extreme. We even have some in the 70s and the lower parts of the south of the deep south. So that's something to keep in mind too, that we could see some storms that could utilize that moisture and could potentially form into supercells. So that's something to keep in mind on Wednesday, that it does look like the stronger event, the next strong event that we could be watching. And so we need to continue to try and monitor these events just by looking at the models, and stay close. Oh my goodness, I can't speak. Pay close attention to the Storm Prediction Center as it gets closer and closer to that event. And then I want to take a look at the GFS real quickly to see just some general storms, see what's happening. So after that low pressure system moves on through, we have another low pressure system that moves through Canada, and it creates a lot of severe weather for the Central Plains. You can see the cold front that just marches on through there. And then another cold front that extends on through and could cause some severe weather. Hey, I might be able to chase this actually, because I'll be in Florida. Oh yeah, I might be able to chase that. That'd be pretty cool if I did. Not gonna lie. So, I don't know, we'll have to see, but as we get closer, we'll have to figure that out. But it is a bit further out into the model, so we'll have to take that with a grain of salt. All right, last thing we're going to take a look at is the wind shear of this low pressure system. And you guys remember the wind shear from yesterday's event had around 80 to 85 knots, maybe even 90 knots with that event. So that was a pretty strong event that caused a 15% significant tornado risk. It caused multiple strong tornadoes, including multiple wedges and twins. We had twins live on stream, and so that was pretty well. Twins on radar live on stream. We had other tornadoes that were caught by our storm chaser on stream, but that was near Clarendon, Texas, a bit later on in the event. But we had multiple strong tornadoes, multiple large tornadoes yesterday, and that was pretty intense. And that was mainly because of the wind shear being so high as it was. As I mentioned in the previous streams, you would typically want around 45 to 50 knots, which is 50 to 55 miles per hour, maybe even 60 mile per hour winds. So the fact that it is 80 to 90 knots, which is around 90 to 100 miles per hour, is practically double the amount that you would typically want. And so that's something to keep in mind, that for future reference in storms like that, we can easily compare as to the same severity with these storms. All right, so here's the new low pressure that moves on through, and just by looking at it, the wind shear isn't as strong. You still have some stuff in the 65 to 70, maybe even 75 knot regions, which is around 75 to 85 miles per hour. Still strong, but not as strong as the event that was yesterday. So it still will be widespread, still have some large gusty winds, maybe even a tornado or something like that. But it is a bit further out for us to tell, so we'll have more information on our video tomorrow. So anyways, guys, that's going to be it for me. If you did like the video, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you are new, hit the notification bell. That way you may be up to date with whatever we do, whether it's severe weather live streams or more videos just like this one. Also be sure to send this video to friends and family. Dixie Alley could very well get active again, and we have a nice stretch of severe weather extending from Tuesday all the way into Thursday morning. So that's something to keep in mind as we continue to get closer and closer, that if we get more people informed, it could most likely save some lives here in this instance. So that would be greatly appreciated if you share this video. That way people can stay informed. And yeah, that's going to be pretty much it. I'll catch you guys later. Yep, my name is Nate. I also go by HockeyBoy8. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.